There's an alligator down there. In fact, there's two of them. At some point in the last day or so, they snuck onto our property and into our pond. It's the first time it's ever happened to us. You know, it's crazy, but I've been thinking a lot about the back perimeter and how to deal with that. And it suddenly occurred to me, as menacing as these alligators are, that they've managed to make me think about the pond slightly differently as it relates to my security system. We actually built this pond. No, I mean literally, it wasn't here before. We built a pond. I don't know if that's a thing that a lot of people know about, but we built it. You know, people shouldn't live here. Florida is basically like an engineering marvel because it's nothing but water and swamps. We dug it out because we were having trouble with a lot of flooding on the property. And actually our neighbors to the left and right of us dealt with their water by pushing it onto ours, which was totally obnoxious. So when we dug this one out, what we ended up doing was we put drainage ditches from either of their properties that went into our pond. And so when it rained or when it poured, that water would drain into our pond and our pond would look even more beautiful than it does today. The thing that's also interesting about it is that with water goes wildlife. And so as a result, when it rains, we get all sorts of fish. And in this particular case, we got alligators. This is KeepOut Cam. This is side door. And rather lacking in creativity, this is Northwest Cam. These are my Sentinels. For whatever reason, and I've done a reboxing on this so you can learn more about it, but for whatever reason, all three of these cameras have decided to stop working. I had originally thought that it was a really clever plan to have KeepOut Cam up by the front gate, have a couple of these cameras flanking it on either side, and then have a couple of cameras just like it out in the back perimeter. In between is the house. The challenge was that this totally blew up my plan. I had these cameras in place. I felt safer. I thought that they were working particularly well. And then unfortunately, I had to shift the plans. I cycled through several cameras up front. Wicked Free Cam, each of these cameras, side door did a tour of duty up there. I have a 2K LTE camera. It's a Starlight, it's fixed. I put that up there for a while. That's when the alligator thing got me, because I started to think about the question, would I ever get into a pond in Florida? Go with me on this one. The answer is no. Why? Because they have alligators. The number one question I get when people visit my property for the first time is, do you have any alligators? This is where it comes to know your local environment, because in Florida, no one is going to go near a pond. No one is going to go near a pond in the middle of the night. And no one is going to go traipsing into a thicket. It was at that point that I realized that this is not a question of, do I have a camera every foot to try and capture these people? This is a situation in which a person who is intruding on my property is naturally, out of fear for their own life, going to avoid thickets and ponds. They're going to move into the openings. Because when you're in an opening in Florida, you can see what's out there. I noticed that if you look at the pond, there is actually two very wonderful places. Place number one is a space between the fence line and a clumping of palm trees, palmettos, and cedar trees and the pond, forcing you what is effectively through a 40-foot gate. That gate can be covered by one of these on this side, one of these on this side. So this is an LTE-Marcos. It's a driveway cam. It goes, I think, up to like half a mile or something like that. You get a notification, and it's a very annoying notification.
Zone 2.
Especially when there's like an animal that's taunting it or something like that. But the fact of the matter is, that thing's solar powered, and it does send you a notification when there is the presence of something. And so that's what I kind of landed on, the presence of something, and then spot check with a camera. Now I've got a trip line, and that's where I put my 2K Starlight LTE camera, because then I can check that trip line. That makes a lot of sense. Trying to cover a pond, trying to cover a thicket, fence line, a trench, a giant field, I wasn't going to do it. But I could create a very specific place in which someone would go. You know, whenever I start to get overly technical, V5, the custom AI built to run the system, always reminds me that this channel is not about security cameras or technology. It's actually about a rural homestead observed through a system. If that's the case, then the gators get the wetlands. I'll observe the drylands.